Welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk to you about miracles. Do you believe in miracles? Do you need a miracle? Well, God is in the miracle working business, so you have come to the right place. Let me tell you about a miracle that I've received, a couple of them. In a previous video, I mentioned to y'all about how the bank had sent down this directive that you couldn't take any more college classes unless they were bank related, and so how all of that got derailed. Well, before I got to that point, I had been going to the Urban League and taking some of their courses on how to open your own business and how to write a business plan and so forth. And during that process, they introduced us to some investors. And these investors, a couple of them were willing to invest in my dream. And since I worked at a bank, I wanted them to go through my bank to make the investment. Well, it's amazing how oftentimes the people around you, they only see you as one-dimensional. I believe that the reason this whole thing happened was because they could only see me as working at the bank and not being a business owner. And the reason I say that is because of what happened. When these investors came to the bank and met with a loan officer to collateralize the loan that they were going to provide for me, they were told that they needed to physically transfer their CDs to our bank before our bank would make the loan. And of course, they weren't willing to do that because they had these long-standing relationships with their own banks. And I worked in the collateral services department, so I knew that that wasn't a requirement. We had lots of promissory notes in the files in our vault. I couldn't imagine why they would require them to bring their CDs to us when they didn't require other people to do that. But consequently, they denied the loan. So I was so upset by that because I couldn't understand what happened. Fast forward, there was an article that came out in the newspaper a few months later. And this article was talking about this practice of redlining. You may not have heard about redlining, but redlining is a practice that was really prevalent back in the day. And it's where banks they had drawn a red line across the map, and they said they would not lend in those areas that were over that red line. And it was always in the lower income areas and the minority areas and so forth. So anyway, this article in the newspaper was about redlining, and they interviewed all of these CEOs of several banks. And one of them happened to be our bank, the bank that I was employed with. And let me just tell you, our bank at the time was in what's called receivership. It was about to go under. And so they had brought in this new person to head to be the CEO of the bank to try to save it. Well, he was interviewed, and in his interview, he said that our bank would never allow redlining to happen at our bank. And he just wouldn't stand for it. And he just went on, talking about it, that was against his beliefs and it was wrong and so forth. Well, the more I read this article, the more upset I became. And it was a Saturday morning. And after I finished reading that article, I pulled out the phone book and looked up his name. And there, his phone number was listed. So I called him. His wife answered. And I identified myself and I asked to speak to him. And she said he was in the shower, but she'd have him call me. Well, I thought she was blowing me off. But lo and behold, he called me. And I told him that I've just read this article regarding redlining where you were interviewed. And I believe that you believe what you said is true. but I'm here to tell you it's not true. Redlining most certainly does happen at our bank, and I have recently been a victim of it. So he asked me to tell him more. And so I proceeded to tell him a little bit more about it. And he told me to bring my business plan to him on Monday morning. He would review it, and if he felt like it had merit, I would have the loan. And so that's what I did. I took my business plan into him on Monday morning, and I think a few days later, maybe by Wednesday or so, he came down to our department and he said, I reviewed your business plan and I think it's viable and you shall have the loan. I was elated. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, I went on and I kept going on with my process because I wasn't at the point at that time to get started right away. I still had some other things that I needed to do. After that, I started looking for buildings. And because I worked downtown, I wanted to serve the downtown population. And every building that I would choose, every location would fall through. Eventually, the last one fell through, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And I just prayed and I said, Lord, are you trying to tell me something? I don't understand. And so I figured, well, maybe God is trying to tell me that I need to start out on a smaller scale. So instead of going after another building downtown, I decided I probably should just buy a house and start, providing childcare from my home with a fewer amount of children. So I contacted a realtor and I told him what I was looking for. I said, I need a house with a big yard that's fenced, that has the garage converted. And, I gave him all of my particulars. Well, he found a property. Well, he didn't find it. One of his colleagues had the listing, and he called me and he said, my buddy has a listing that is exactly what you said you're looking for. Please go and take a look. Long story short, I ended up buying that property, and I used the money that I was going to use to open the facility. I used that loan to buy this property. And I'm so glad I did, because I will tell you more later about other miracles that I've had in buying this property. But what I want you to remember, and if you don't already know, there's a scripture in the Bible in Psalms 110:1. It says that the Lord will make your enemies your footstool. That is what happened in this situation. The loan officer that turned down the investors for my loan, that loan officer had another client a few months later that came in that bought several properties. And he mentioned to the loan officer that his tenants had said that one of those properties would be an excellent location for a child care facility. And he said, but I don't know anything about child care. Well, the loan officer told him that he said, I know somebody who knows a lot about child care. As a matter of fact, she's been working on opening one for quite some time. And he gave that person my number. And the person called me and asked me, and he said to me what I just said to you about the location being excellent for a child care facility. And he asked if I was willing to meet with him. And of course I was. And that's the location where I opened my child care facility. But do you see how God made the loan officer my footstool? Yeah, that was a miracle. And the other miracle in that situation was If I had gotten either one of those buildings downtown that I wanted to get, my business would have gone under within the first year because downtown Austin went bust and our economy went bust. And so many places, so many businesses went under, and even our bank, like as I mentioned, it was in receivership. It was eventually sold to Frost Bank. And God saved me from that. That's why all of those other buildings kept falling apart because I wasn't supposed to be in that location, even though I thought that's where I wanted to be. And I also mentioned in one of the previous videos that my colleagues were fearful of me leaving because they kept asking, what if it doesn't work? What if it fails? And I always told them I'm very employable. I can always get another job. And I also mentioned that some of them came to me to ask for if I had a position for them. That's why they came to me, because downtown, our bank and other banks had gone under. So there were so many miracles in that situation that happened for me. And even with buying my home, I have owned my home now for 34 years. And because it's outside of the city limits, it has enabled me to have different types of business ventures that I could not have had I been within the city limits. So if you are needing a miracle, you don't believe in miracles, please, I want you to start believing in miracles. And I'm sure you've already had many miracles in your life. You just haven't thought of them as miracles, but they are. When God moves things out of the way and he rearranges different things in our lives, those are miracles. When he makes something happen that normally would not have happened, that's a miracle. Because how is it that this loan officer who didn't believe in me to be able to be self-employed, send the very person to me who could make it happen? And I didn't need an investor. The investors that were going to help me, I would have been indebted to them financially for a really long time. Since that happened and I didn't have to use them, I was able to go into my first business venture that helped me to become self-employed. I went into that business debt-free. I didn't have any debt hanging over my head. Was that a miracle or what? There are lots of miracles out here that happen every day. And I want you to believe. I want you to start paying attention to the things that are happening in your life. It's not just good luck. A lot of people get a miracle and they think, oh, well, that was just a lucky break. Or, what a coincidence. No, that was God. It was God. So just remember, no matter how bad things look, and they looked really bad and really dark when I was turned down for the loan, but little did I know that God was orchestrating my path. He was orchestrating the things in my life, just like as if they were puzzle pieces. And he was putting those things together so that it would be in my best interest. Because I couldn't see that in the beginning. And we never can see it in the beginning. It's always in hindsight that we recognize how God has been working in our lives. So that's what I want you to remember. Whatever you're struggling with today, just remember that God is not wringing his hands and wondering what he's going to do, and he's in control of it all. And he can bring you whatever it is that you desire, if that's his will for you. His plans are usually far better than our plans. So keep that in mind. When something doesn't go the way you want it to, instead of getting discouraged and thinking that you'll never do any better, you'll never have what you want, just remember this conversation that God has your back. He is in control of your life, and He wants what's best for you. And He's going to prevent us from doing a lot of things that are not in our best interest. Even though it doesn't feel good not to get what you want. He knows what He's doing, and just trust Him. Remember, we have a wonderful life. Let's make it count. I'll see you next time.